Today's episode is sponsored by Clay to Table, an online pottery sale that includes a diverse group of potters from across the United States and Canada. This year's sale features 16 potters with over 1,000 pots. The sale will go live on Friday, September the 3rd at noon Eastern Standard Time. In addition to the sale, Clay to Table is holding a collector sweepstakes benefiting their partner Crafting the Future. Purchase tickets for your chance to win a group of amazing pots while supporting this wonderful organization. For details on the collector sweepstakes and the upcoming sale, visit claytotablepottery.com. Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 387 of the podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in. Today on the show, I talk with Adam Chau about his new podcast, Trade Secret. In our interview, we talk about the concept for the show, as well as playing an extended clip featuring Judah Schwartz and April Felipe talking about education. The structure for the show is that Adam talks to two different people during each interview, and they have a group conversation about a specific topic. You can subscribe to Trade Secret on your favorite podcast app, and you can find out more about the network that it's on, called the Brickyard Network, at brickyardnetwork.org. Before we get to that interview, I also wanted to thank some of the listeners that have been donating to the show. We are listener-supported, so I'd like to thank Ian Young, Linda Hillman, and Douglas Bamford for their recent contributions. If you'd like to get involved yourself, you can do that at talesofaredclayrambler.com/donate. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. So I wanted to have you on to talk about a podcast that you have coming up, which is launching soon. So can you tell us the name of the show and the concept?
Yeah, so the name is called Trade Secret, and the concept is really looking at different areas of art, craft, and design, and really flushing through different themes, whether it be their general themes, so something like censorship or teaching or multimedia. I invite two artists per episode to talk about a single theme. So I've chosen people that are really experts or really practice in each theme, and they have a dialogue with each other. So what I love about it is that we're all conversing with each other, and it really feels like a true dialogue.
Can you talk about structuring the show? Like when you had the idea for the show, how did you formulate how many episodes and what those themes were going to be?
I really took it as almost like writing a book, right? If I were to write a book about ceramics within art, craft, and design, how would I structure it and how would I put chapters to it? So I really felt like these themes would be an individual chapter. I also talk with curators because I'm really interested in how they curate ceramics in different shows, whether it be an all ceramic show or multimedia. I'm also really interested in, how artists really navigate the world, not just their practice, but how they live as well. So all of these ideas coalesced. I was trying to just organize it. And these 12 different episodes popped up. I'm really starting with the debut about people that emerged because I thought it was, apt to emerge a podcast with talking about emerging. And we'll see how it ends.
So when you think about 12, is there any significance to 12 in terms of the way you think about starting an idea and finishing idea? So for instance, could you have made a 48 episode podcast, or did a smaller chunk help?
I really try to condense it. So 12 for me is a really good number. It just seems not too long, not too short. And it gave me some parameters because if I had 100 episodes to work with, I could, I think I would be a little too frivolous with it. I think it would have gotten a little too eccentric and unwieldy. And then too little, something like 6 episodes, I would have had to have these giant buckets and I would have to cram multiple themes into one thing. And I really felt like 12, I was able to isolate different themes.
Can you talk about some of the folks, if you're okay with it, talk about some of the people that will be on the show in the future?
Sure. So I interview people like Jennifer Ling Dadchuk, Roberto Lugo. On the design side, Jonathan Hopp and Ray Stern, Wade McDonald, Gerald Brown, and curators even like Jennifer Zilling or Nava Milliken and Angelique Vizcarrondo-Laboy.
Yeah, it's an amazing group of people. This interview is a little mini interview to promote one of the episodes, which we're going to play a chunk of right after this on the show. This is an interview between April Felipe and Judy Schwartz. So can you talk about that episode?
Yeah, I'm so excited to lead with this episode because it's going into how ceramic artists teach. Judy is professor emeritus at NYU, and April Felipe has worked at both the college level as well as the pre-K level. So both of these people are really experts in teaching ceramics. And I really think if there are instructors listening, this is really worthwhile to listen to because it runs the gamut. It talks about teaching kids, it talks about teaching adults, beginners, non-beginners, and the nuances between all of that. We also really talk about teaching skill versus teaching concepts, which is really big for me to talk about because when we teach, there are different ways to teach, right? And I don't want to say there's one way that's better than another, but if you listen to the episode, I think both Judy and April really get into effective teaching.
Yeah, I was listening to the episode to prepare for this interview with you, and I was just thinking that Judy is just, I guess this is what happens when you teach for a really long time. Like she can describe the moment of learning in a very impactful way, which I really enjoyed. I thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah, she's definitely a master at teaching. I think she won an award at the Met for like outstanding teacher.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Well, while I got you here, I wanted to also talk a little bit about what the Color Network is going on. So for the folks that don't know the Color Network, just quickly describe what that is.
So the Color Network actually started back in the 1990s, where a group of artists of color wanted to support each other. And it has now grown into a network where we still support and promote artists of color. It's a little bit more structured. We have a mentorship program, an exhibitions program, a listserv, as well as a database. And the database is non-hierarchical, which means that you can apply and you will get in. We do not jury you. You do not need an MFA or a BFA. There are many people that have come out of community centers or even just wanting to learn about clay, get in contact with us. And we really support through micro grants and other opportunities like exhibitions.
Yeah, that's a wonderful organization that you talked more about when we did your interview on this show, which was sometime last year. I probably should have looked that up. I can't remember which episode it was, but people can listen back to that if they want to have more information. You guys are getting ready to have a big event and have a call for entry. So can you talk about the event that's coming up?
Yeah, I'm so excited. And it's just like, it's such a big project that I really want to broadcast it to as many people as possible. The Color Network is partnering with Grounds for Sculpture, which is in New Jersey, with a multi-pronged program, including an exhibition. This exhibition has 16 artists in it. Half of them have already been curated in. The other four of them are to be curated by a curator, Angelique Vizcarrondo-Laboy. And we have reserved 4 spots for a call for art for people to apply to get in. There is I think, a fairly generous honorarium with the shipping budget. And we really welcome applications from self-identifying artists of color working in ceramics. And there is a tight deadline. I don't quite remember when this recording is going to go out, but August 31st is the cutoff point. So please look on Grounds for Sculpture's website or go to the Color Network. You can also email us for details. We're looking for applications that fit under the theme of fragile earth. So we're working with fragility in many different respects. Angelique has a very beautiful statement on that. And again, I can't urge enough how great of an opportunity this is, and that everyone that is an artist of color should apply.
Yeah, and I'm going to try to come up to that opening. You mentioned that the show, I think, will be up for a whole year, so people have plenty of time to see it once it's up.
Yeah, so the show opens up in May of 2022 and will go on for the rest of the year. And I hope everyone will see it because it's a 42-acre place. It's a huge place. There will be other exhibits open. And if you haven't been and you're in the New Jersey tri-state area, it's a very easy drive. Parking, I went there a couple of months ago to visit, very easy to park. You can't miss it. They're 30-foot sculptures. It's kind of a wild place.
Well, I wanted to thank you for coming on the show, and just quickly to plug again, the show is Trade Secret, and it's going to launch August the 16th, and it'll be released every Monday for that next 12 weeks.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks for joining us, April and Judy. I am so impressed with your experiences in teaching at so many different levels. Both of you have taught college level classes, and I've seen, Judy, at least, I've seen you in action at the Clay Arts Center talking with very young kids, and I've just been so impressed. And I think we can kind of pick apart the differences in teaching grads versus K through 12, but I want to know, are there any similarities in teaching grads and, say, middle schoolers?
I love the question, and obviously there are big differences. But I want to also emphasize that as educators, we not only have an obligation to maybe children through graduate students. I had undergraduates and master's students and then doctoral students. But also we have a role, I think, to play to the public in that we are people who promote and value clay. And I guess because I not only taught industrial arts boys shop in 1958, when industrial arts ceramics fell in the industrial arts boys shop program, and teaching in Spanish Harlem was an entirely different experience than teaching at the Clay Arts Center, let's say, for another age range, but also a different demographic. But I also worked for Lenox China for 8 years as their educational consultant. So it's not only age, but I think we have to tailor ourselves to different populations as well. So part of my role in, let's say, at Arts Westchester, when I'm a board member, is to promote ceramics in among the other visual arts. I think I have a role to do there. But now to get specifically to the question, I do an assignment, and I have to tell you that no matter what age or any of these populations that I'm using, I use the same assignment to get kids and even grad students involved with clay, because a lot of my even grad students were sculpture majors or photography or painters. So they weren't necessarily just for clay. And NYU over the years has become very cross interdisciplinary. So here's the assignment. I asked students to show me in clay. They had 1 minute to take a lump of clay, and I would give them some adjectives. And the adjectives might be fearful, it might be anger, or it might be funny. But for kids, I might say silly instead of funny, or whimsical on the graduate level. And I want to tell you, those, to start the very first class with giving those emotional, those adjectives, and having the students create a work of art that had to convey meaning within 1 minute. And you could see curlicues coming up for the silly or for the humor. You could see texture and kids banging their nails and hands into the clay for the emotional, the anger one. And then I would use the word sensuous, but for the little kids, I would use, love. And these words were so highly charged that at any age level, people could convey it. And then I said at the end of it, you're all artists. You all conveyed to me a feeling without that word. I had them all put silly on one table, and then fearful on another, and then the other one, let's say, smooth or sensual on the other. And then we critique the work. And this was in the very first hour of class. And it was so invigorating to me, and I could do it on all levels, and it was such a joy. So that's my first response to that, because I want to make sure April has a chance to respond as well. Thank you.
That's awesome. That's such a great thing. I'm like, that I will be borrowing then next time I'm teaching. That's awesome. I tend to teach a lot of outreach through community art centers for younger children that delve into all different types of economic backgrounds. So for some schools that we're in, kids don't have art, any type of expanded vision of art beyond like crayons due to finances for the school, And so a lot of times I think about the same things, which is what can art do? And I think a lot sometimes for my younger kids, I'm thinking about like, how does it let you talk throughout your day that you couldn't do in another way? And I think for grad students, and when they're kind of focused in more, it's still that same question. Because, right, like the funny thing about art, it's the same thing. It's communicating. And so even if you're tiny, it's still about communicating. And a lot of times for younger students, and I think it's applicable as well for your grad students or for your college level students, which is, how is this a space for you to have a voice you don't have maybe in any other way? And I look at it as that being the big opportunity. Like for younger kids, a lot of times in school, art is a place where they can feel successful, where maybe their relationships with academics is not always pleasant, or they're dealing a lot with trouble at home or different types of environments. And I feel like you're giving them a language that they can be successful in. And I think with grads, what I hope that I'm doing is also giving them an opportunity to help them clarify what they're trying to communicate. Like that's how I see, like at that level, where it's about you're expressing that you want to communicate an idea or a vision, and I'm trying to help you do that to complete your vision, or help you reflect upon what you want to create or talk about. So to me, I always think about teaching as about or art and clay is about trying to figure out how to give people an opportunity to communicate clearly or in a way they didn't think of before.
What happens when you have to start to interject technique into realizing that content? Is there a balance between, saying, I think that's such a lovely project, Judy, where you're introducing kind of content first and vision first. When do you cross that bridge into someone saying, I don't know how to realize my vision? Like, how do you start to introduce that technique, but not have it so technique heavy that the vision is lost?
So I try to teach unlike I was taught. I had a fabulous education at Ohio State. I mean, we had 6 full-time faculty, each with their own specialty. We had Margaret Fetzer just taught wheel throwing. We're talking back in 1960. Carlton Atherton just taught aesthetics. We had others just doing mold making. Littleton just taught glaze chemistry. So, I mean, I had an incredible education. And I did nothing but study clay. I took no other classes. It was just that formidable experience. But, you know, when you learn something so deeply and so intensely, you know what to take and what to throw away. And now to answer your question, I have to say that children's way of thinking about the world is entirely different. And you have to pose technique for them differently. Children want to alter and understand and interpret their world. So that's why you always see great drawings of children. What do they draw? Their house, their mother, their father, their dogs, their pets, their siblings. And their work becomes a diary of their events. I'm not interested in technique for kids. I'm interested in them getting into what the art experience is about, which is conveying meaning for them. And quite frankly, meaning for each of us is universal. You know, the reason why art speaks to all of us is because we share the same things, the same emotional things, all on different levels. Now, I have to also say that since there are no preconceived, I have to break down barriers about preconceived rules about how you make things in clay. It annoys me to no end. I go around the world and looking at clay departments, and well, let's just say in the United States, and I can go into lecturing around. You see the same looking coil pots on every shelf in every department. And no matter where you're going, coil, pinch, slab thrown. And to me, that's not the way my role is. My role is to break down preconceived notions of what clay should look like. So when I teach a pinch pot, the students are not allowed, no matter what age, to put the pot down on the table, because that already flattens it out to an ashtray. And that everyone at camp knows exactly the ashtrays that in my age anyway, we brought home those flat pancakes. So their first assignment is to make 3 pinch pots held in their hand that then have to go to a wall. They have their orientation for the pot is not a pedestal, not vertical, but horizontal on a wall. The moment I change the axis as to a pot on the wall, and they're now peering into it, and then they can add 2 or 3 together, that changes it. And I want to tell you, this works again for art majors and for master students because you break the rules. I don't want any look, we have thousands of years of preconceived notions of what ceramics is about. You know, we have 10,000 years. I was just at the Met last week and just going into the South American section. I mean, I see the great pots, and we all have the orientation. We drink out of cups. We urinate in urinals. We have sinks that we work out of. We have all preconceived notions. So my job as a teacher is to break down those notions and have them look at the clay material fresh. And by looking at it fresh, I then introduce technique if they need it as they move ahead. I do the same thing with coil construction. I might show how you build up a wall, but it's always to the concept and the idea, not technique. So an assignment for the coil, so that was the pinch assignment, but the assignment for the coil, because, I'm just teaching how to build up form in clay, is to make a vessel for their favorite food. And as soon as I do that, you should see all the cookie jars that came out. And they were cookie jars in the form of a shark reaching in to the shark's mouth to reach for the cookie. And so all of a sudden, the technique became incidental to the concept. So if you teach for concept, you always then add the technique after, not first.
I have to say, I like to think of it too as you're trying to write a letter. And I tell them like technique is like the vocabulary you're using. So if you only have 4 words, you still can communicate, but it might be nice. It might be nice to add a couple of more words that might make it more clear. And I think I agree with you in that, where I try to, I'm not a technique heavy, like technique was never what drove me as an artist. I kind of was a little bit like, I want to get this job done, and whatever gets me there. That's like, I was the kid who could barely sit through the demo, because I would be like, I get it. Do we get the clay now? Can I have the clay now? May I have it? And so I think a lot about when I'm teaching, I try not to remember that not everybody is like that, but I'm not a demo heavy, technique heavy person. I kind of agree with Judy in that I like to see what their idea is going to be and then what tools you need to build. With young kids, that is never the problem. They're not shy. Like kids will be like, I know how to do this. Actually, I'm making a pirate ship. I know they don't need you to tell them. They're less timid. So a lot of times I will be teaching both at the university and doing my kids' classes at the same time. So some days, if I'm honest, especially if I'm teaching foundation classes, I will be like, they're looser. They have not built up the fear of being judged over what they're making, because it's not about being congratulated about what they're creating with the younger children, right? It's about play. And so there comes a point, even when I'm I've done elementary school, and then when we move on, as we get into middle school and high school, and then we're very aware of what we perceive as quality. And I think that's something I try to get them to get over, that this is a long process of making for my college level students. And it's not about whether or not what you're creating in this moment has to be this fabulous, perfect, and what their vision of, which is sometimes like photorealism and, these like hyper technique based thing that they have created in their head, that this is good. This is quality. And so that's something that I try to really enforce, that it is not just that like making and creating is this longer process. And so, yes, you can have pride and enjoy what you're creating, but it's like we're on this longer road. So don't get so caught up. And a lot of that is just about, especially when you're doing like sculpture, it's not quite the same, where I feel like sometimes when people are throwing, they can do that, like, we're going to make this and it doesn't matter what you're creating. So it's like, how can you bring play in but still show that play is an important tool? And so that's something when I'm teaching my older students, it's hard. That's something that I try to have them work on loosening up without being flippant, like it's important, but also like, it's okay. Like, this is a learning process. It's okay if it doesn't come out.
I'd like to thank Adam for coming on the show, and I hope that you guys will subscribe to Trade Secret. It's available now on your favorite podcast app. Over the next couple weeks, I'm going to be interviewing the other hosts that are on the Brickyard Network, which is a newly launched network that is ceramic specific. If you'd like to find out more about that, you can go to brickyardnetwork.org. You can also follow it on Instagram at Brickyard Network. Before we go, I also wanted to thank today's sponsor, Clay to Table. They're going to be having an online sale featuring 16 potters with over 1,000 pots starting on Friday, September the 3rd at noon Eastern Time. In addition to the sale, Clay to Table is holding a collector sweepstakes featuring a group of pots that are donated from the potters in the sale, and this all goes to benefit Crafting the Future. If you'd like to buy a ticket or find out more about the sale, you can go to claytotablepottery.com. I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.
This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.